Hey, this is Taz Street with Positive Out Loud. Today I have a very, very cool guest on the show. I have Dr. Ashlee Greer, and she has a PhD in psychology, and she's been helping her clients for over 15 years in her practice to live a hell yes kind of life, to get into the authentic person of who they are, and to just have that freedom and that joy-filled life. And I've been watching some of your videos online, Ashlee, and I just love your, love how authentic you are. And I love how you seem to be so happy and fulfilled, and that you are in Bali of all places. And I would love the story about that. And that you just have this vibrancy, this and then the fact that you are so intuitive, and this is what the show is all about, is to get people back to who they truly are. So if you can start off a little bit and tell me exactly, how you really help your clients, what is your specialty, and then we'll start back from your journey from before you became a psychologist.
Absolutely. So my specialty is I really work with people who tend to be highly sensitive. They're really empathic. They tend to feel a lot. They tend to be overgivers, overhelpers, and they tend to have what I call, I'm actually writing a book about this right now that'll come out in the next couple of months, what I call everyday codependency, which is basically this idea of they are actually kind of trying to control their world by overgiving. They're trying to get their needs met for love, for affiliation, for approval, for all of these things, by overgiving, by overhelping, by all of those things. And so that tends to be my niche. It's a lot of entrepreneurs and creatives specifically who I work with, because those are the folks who tend to be in this space of wanting to do really big things, wanting to be really self-expressed, wanting to be really like living a life that's really juicy and amazing, but finding themselves hiding because they're really, really terrified of what it means if they actually finally put themselves first and prioritize what they really want.
Wow, that's a lot. That's awesome. So give me a little bit of background of where you've been, where did you grow up, and what was it like, and why did you find this profession? What brought you to that?
I grew up in Wisconsin, actually, of all things, and I did my undergraduate work I double majored in English and philosophy. And so I've always loved really diving into the nature of the way people think. And I considered going to graduate school for English, but what are you going to do with English? You're going to be a literature critique, like a literature critic, or you're going to write or be a professor. And I was like, there's something else about literature and philosophy that really interests me. It's really diving into people's stories. It's really diving into what motivates people. And so I started in my undergrad studying psychology, and I didn't want to take on a third major because that just sounded ridiculous. And so I ended up graduating with my 2 majors and then going to get my master's degree a couple of years later, when I was like, I want to do something more. I want to do something bigger. When I was about halfway done with my master's program, I realized that I really wanted to study it even deeper and get the PhD so that I had the freedom to be able to practice on my own when I was a psychologist. And the freedom to be able to go in and really dive into the research and all of that stuff that I find really interesting. I'm a Virgo, so I love the information and gathering information and looking at the research. And so it's really interesting because now, I've really empowered more of the intuitive side of myself. And so I love combining this intuitive sense and the research. So combining, all of the science that backs up all of this, really spiritual, the spiritual depth of our existence, so that we can sort of let our logical mind relax. Because I find this with a lot of my own clients, that until they can let their logical mind relax, they're not able to empower their heart.
So do you feel like you were in your head a lot when you were younger, and this is what brought you to this, or?
Oh, for sure. I talked to you earlier about those clients that I help. That was me. 15 years ago. It was, I grew up in a family where there was narcissism and there was alcoholism. And there was some emotional abuse and some verbal abuse and things like that. And so I really had this intense internal judge that constantly told me I wasn't good enough, I wasn't lovable, I had to work to earn love, I had to make sure other people liked me, otherwise there was something wrong with me. I had to do what other people expected of me. And that ended up basically fulfilling, I don't want to say fulfilling because it wasn't fulfilling. It ended up causing what allowed me to break free of everything, which happened about 5 years ago.
So was that what you would call your dark night of the soul kind of?
Interestingly, it didn't feel that dark. I feel like because I don't believe there's one dark night of the soul. I believe that you have multiple dark nights of the soul, because to have it all weigh on one is it's a lot of pressure, to be honest. And then it sort of is like, oh, good, I'm done. Check. And it's like, no, we have these moments when we're going to confront a new layer, a new moment in ourselves. But yeah, what happened was I had graduated with the PhD. I had this fiance, who's a very nice man, but who I call Mr. Khaki, because he was very, tried and true and steady and boring. We owned a house. I had a life that looked great on paper, according to the script of the way that we're supposed to live our lives, right? I checked all the boxes, and I was epically unhappy. I was so unhappy. I was like 80 pounds heavier than I am now. I was riddled with autoimmune arthritis. I was just basically trying to numb myself with anything I could find, wine or television or food or whatever, just to try to keep myself satisfied in this life that ultimately didn't make me happy.
So what moments led you to the point where you realized, I am truly unhappy and I have to start making some changes? What was that catalyst for that?
To be honest, it wasn't an overnight change. I found that because I wasn't listening to myself, I hadn't yet empowered my intuition to the level it's at now, where I can just feel the discomfort and go and make a change. What happened was, over the process of about a year and a half, I just started to feel really, really sick. I started to feel irritated all the time. And as you know, I'm a very happy-go-lucky, goofy person. And I was irritated and everybody was in my way. And I was just really feeling like the world was oppressive. And I was getting sick all the time. I got pneumonia. I got a terrible intestinal infection that took me out of work for 2 months. I just kept getting sick, thing after thing after thing. And I was finally like, I can't do my job anymore. I blamed it on my job first. I can't do my job anymore.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm going to quit my job as a psychologist and figure something else out. I was the head of trauma and sexual assault at a 40,000 student university. Wow. And and so did really great work with these students, but it the way the bureaucracy worked, I was working 60 hours a week and I wasn't earning that much money because you know how universities are. And I just was feeling spent. And I thought, I'm just stressed. I just need to turn down the stress and everything will get better. And then I won't be so irritated with life all the time. And so I ended up quitting my job. And luckily, my ex-fiance gave me the space to do that. I ended up getting a job in a prison, believe it or not, for a few.
That's even more oppressive.
Right? Well, it is in terms of the control in that space. However, I worked in this prison. It's a psychiatric prison for a few years when I was in graduate school, and it was really interesting. But the promise was I had flexibility with my hours. If I wasn't feeling well in the morning, I could come in late, and I only had to do 40 hours a week, and I could leave it there. And I thought, that'll fix everything. Within a few weeks, I was feeling nauseous every morning. I wanted to throw up every morning. I felt terrible. And so I quit that job too. I quit that job I was like, I can't. I am still feeling so sick. Something's not right. I have to take care of my health. That's what I was doing initially. So I quit that job and I ended up actually becoming a freelance writer, believe it or not. I ended up writing content for coaching companies, for all these people who wanted psychologically based content, which is like half the people on the internet. And I did that.
Exactly, right? Everybody's a coach right now.
Exactly. And so I ended up doing that for a while. And then I started to wake up as I started to feel things lighten up. I started to feel things get a little bit happier. I realized that there was a whole other page of this unhappiness, and it was with my relationship. It was where I lived. And I remember one of my best friend laughs at me about this, is for about 6 months, I was researching places to move, like apartments in other towns, things like this. I would talk to my fiance about like, how would you feel if I lived in Taos, New Mexico for half the year? Would that be okay with you? And he's like, okay. And I was like, but this still doesn't feel good.
Right.
And I started to connect with, this doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel good. This doesn't feel right. What's going on? And so what I did was I realized it was my relationship. The breaking point, and this is so arbitrary, but this is the way it happens, was I was in the refrigerator, or my ex-fiance was in the refrigerator, and I ducked in to grab like a bottle of water underneath him, and he's like, oh. And I was like, what was that? And he's like, why are you in my way? Why couldn't you wait? What's so important? Da, 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 da. And he goes off about all this stuff, and I looked at him wide-eyed like, wow, I didn't know all that went through your head when I did something as simple as reached into the refrigerator. Mm-hmm. And he goes, why? What do you think when I reach into the refrigerator when you're looking? And I turned to him and said, I think you need something out of the refrigerator. And it was one of those moments that I realized, like, we weren't similar people. I was this optimistic person who was getting rid of the way that I the ways that I thought, which were, destructive. And he would say to me, like, I'm not the Buddha, I can't change, even though he was Buddhist. And I'm like, you do realize that's what I do for a living, right? I help people change the way they think. Yeah, I don't think that's possible. I don't. So for 6 months, I asked for all of my needs to be met. And I figured it would either make our relationship great or it would break it. It broke it. And he was a beautiful human being who eventually said, I don't think you can be happy in this relationship. You have to leave me because I won't ever leave you.
Wow. That's pretty deep right there, right?
It is. And it was probably one of the most profound gifts another human being could give me, was the freedom to stop acting out of my own codependency, which said, I got to make this work. I'm loyal. It's my problem. Something's wrong with me. Right. Mm-hmm. And so then I ended up leaving.
Oil and water don't mix very well, does it?
Well, exactly. You can't. Sometimes I think a lot of times the problem isn't us. The problem is that we're not willing to look at the things that just aren't working in our life.
Right.
And so I ended up leaving the ex-fiance, moving to Austin, Texas. I had lived in a small town in Texas at this point, and getting 10 times happier from there. A year and a half later, I went minimalist. I got rid of everything I owned except for what I could fit in my car. Mm-hmm. Then I traveled around the country, lived in log cabins in like New Mexico and Montana, and just really started to ask myself, what would make me happy? What do I actually want? What do I want to do? Mm-hmm. Eventually I moved to Hawaii, and I lived on an off-grid organic farm, like completely off-grid, solar panels, compost toilet, catchment water in an orchard with like citrus fruit and cows and pigs and durian fruit. And I didn't have a car for 6 months just to say, does this make me happy? Is this something that I want? Because I am a little bit granola, you know what I mean? I do like living with less chemicals and more natural stuff. And I was like, this is an amazing experience, but I do like a little bit of luxury. I do like when it rains for 3 days, my internet doesn't go out because it's satellite because the power went out, and things. Right. And so then I moved around in Hawaii, moved down the coast for a while, and then eventually I was like, nope, I have to move to Bali. I don't know why. Are you crazy? Because you're trading paradise for what? What you think is better? How dare you? And how often do we all say that to ourselves? How dare you go for that thing? Your life is pretty good. That's how we convince ourselves to settle for what isn't truly fulfilling us. Right. And then I moved to Bali, and it's been the best choice ever. And yet, I've recently made a choice to move on to another country because it felt right. It felt like time.
Because everything has a beginning and an end, right? That's the whole thing. And we think that we have to be loyal. Like you said, we have to be loyal in this relationship or this job, or I've been here for 40 years and I'm not going anywhere. My desk has all this dust on, it's kind of crazy.
It is. And I think part of it is because we want to control the chaos. We want to make one decision that will last for the rest of our lives.
Because that feels comfortable, right? Yeah.
Well, exactly. And it feels really safe. Like, oh, finally, I got that checked out. I now know my life's purpose. I mean, research points out that we significantly change our jobs and our roles in life in terms of employment 7 times in life. That's the average. It's 5 or 7. It's one of those.
Mm-hmm.
So why are we trying to find this concrete reality that this is now who I am, this is who I am forever?
Right.
I mean, I think it ends up cheating us out of the opportunity to constantly keep evolving and keep growing. I always say we're like trees, like if a tree is not expanding, it's dying. And I think that we're the same.
Right, right. I've been in the federal service for many years. I started off in the Army, and then I ended up going to I don't know, I'm trying to count on my fingers here, but I get bored and I want to move on to something else. And so I've had all of these different jobs and these different careers, and that's just who I am. And I finally had to come to realize that I'm not like the person that wants to stay somewhere for 40 or 50 years. I actually enjoy trying something new at least every 5 years, and I accepted myself for that, and I love it.
Did you have guilt or anything at first when you started to do that?
There was a job where I was getting paid really well, but my health was declining, and I had been there. It's the longest job I ever had was 11 years. And I realized the universe got me out of that one because I wasn't going to leave because it was just too incredible. I got to travel everywhere around the world. I was getting paid really well, but I wasn't happy, and my health was declining. So I got out of there. And from there, I've never stayed anywhere longer than anywhere for 4 years since then.
Wow. And I love that like the universe made it happen because you weren't going to let go.
Yeah.
I find that happens. And that's why we have to listen to ourselves and listen to our intuition and empower that piece of ourselves. Because if we don't listen, if we don't get quiet and get used to being slightly uncomfortable, because usually those times saying, oh, I'm going to leave a bunch of money and world travel behind, that's uncomfortable. If we're not willing to sit with that and say, okay, I'm willing to sit with that and see what's on the other side of that discomfort, then the universe is going to shake that tree and make you fall out of it, whether you like it or not.
Absolutely. And my wife, we were trying to get pregnant at one time, and it wasn't quite working out the way we wanted. She ended up having an abortion. I mean, not an abortion, a miscarriage. And so we decided, well, let's just go to Thailand for about a month, and with backpacks on. I'm like, ooh, that was a little uncomfortable for me because I've never done it quite to that extreme. But I'm like, okay, let's do it. And it was the best trip I've ever had. It was the best trip I've ever had. It was amazing. I mean, we just kind of went with the flow. And yeah, I did schedule the places where we were going to stay, but we traveled all over Thailand, had the best time ever in our lives. And sometimes it's just so hard to listen to that inner voice to tell you what to do next,
It is. It really is. And I think it's one of the most important things we can do. But in order to do it, we have to become really aware.
Mm-hmm.
Have that willingness to be aware and awake to like the discomfort or to, well, this isn't working. Maybe that means not pushing harder. Maybe that means changing the path we're walking down or whatever it might be.
So for people that are listening out there, what would you recommend for people to really listen to that inside voice and know if it's really giving you the right direction? What would you suggest?
I'd love to walk them through a little exercise if that's okay with you.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay, cool. So it's what I call intuition anchoring. Okay. And it essentially is, I believe that intuition is really felt in our body, but we get in the way with our thoughts. Well, that doesn't make any sense. I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't let go of this really good job that I make a lot of money. That's ridiculous. We question ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if we tune into our body, we're able to get answers like that. It just takes a little bit of practice. So essentially what you do is, for your audience members watching this, close your eyes for a second. And I want you to feel where inside of your body you feel the answers to these questions. I like to eat dirt. I am an octopus. I have 15 legs. I am immortal. I have 47 brains. My name is fill in the blank with your name. I like sunshine. I could use to relax more. Now, you can continue asking yourself different questions, but these were definite core yes and no questions. You essentially anchor into where in my body did I feel these things? And I advise people to create a list of questions, yes and no. You know, I was coming up with very silly ones, but for you, maybe there's really basic ones like I like mushrooms, or I love my partner, or things like that, you know, that you know are yes or no questions, or I love my children, or whatever, you know, those yes and no questions that are for sure yes and no, that you know they're yes and no. And then you just pay attention to your body. You pay attention to where in your body you feel it. So for me, when I have a yes, it feels like an elevator going up, and I feel it in my chest and then in my head if it's a really strong yes. My nose is like an elevator going down in my body, and I feel it in my gut, and I feel it like all the way down, like in my sacral chakra or in my root chakra. If it's a no, you know, the stronger it goes down, the bigger of a no it is. The stronger it goes up, the bigger of a yes it is. So eventually what you do is after you feel into where in your body you feel this, you ask yourself yes and no questions. Should I travel to Thailand for a month? Should I look at different types of work? Should I eat bananas for breakfast? You can ask anything for yourself. And the beauty of this is that the more and more you get used to it, used to asking yourself these questions in practice, the more you're able to actually begin to live this all the time, because you're asking yourself questions all the time without even being aware of it. And so once you get used to where in your body you feel it, you're like, do I want pancakes or do I want eggs for eggs? I can feel that. You know, I mean, simple questions. And then you can eventually begin to live inside your own inner genius or your own inner guru, because you always have the answer provided for you if you just listen.
Yeah, when you were asking or saying those statements and I was closing my eyes because some of them were so silly, like the octopus, I was feeling it everywhere, you know. I'm an octopus.
It is better if you can ask yourself personally, emotionally salient questions. It's harder for you to do that, though, to know which ones are yes and no to you, because, you know, even asking something as I love my partner, some people don't. And so I can't definitely, you know, say for sure that that's a yes or no answer.
Well, most people like chocolate or wine or whatever. They can ask that and then they'll know how does that feel inside, right? Okay.
Right, but only if they really like wine or only if they really like chocolate, you know, because we want to ask questions that are emotionally salient and that are definite yes or no's. And then it's basically like a process of refinement. The more questions we ask and the further we get along in the process, the more we're able to ask ourselves more finely tuned questions.
So do you think it'd be better to write all those down that you know for sure that you do like or don't like, and then have somebody ask you that while you have your eyes closed, maybe?
You could do that, or you could just ask, you know, go down the list and say, I breathe air, and you feel into your body. You close your eyes.
Gotcha. Right. Awesome.
And feel into your body. But yeah, and then when you're doing it for actually important questions that you don't know the answer to, if you don't feel a definite yes or no in either direction, the thing I suggest is rephrasing the question. So the question might be, will I ever find my home, or something like that? Let's say you feel like you don't know if this house is your home. Well, it's going to say, you know, it's not going to give you a clear answer, because home, what does that mean? You're home inside your body. You're home inside your heart. Your home, you know, you do have a home. It might not be the ideal home. So you rephrase it and you refine it. So you ask something like, will I find a physical house that makes me feel comfortable? And things
something
like
more specific, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Don't ever be afraid to refine it. Isn't it? It's so simple.
Oh my gosh. Because there's just so much stuff out there, especially now that we have the internet and social media and all these things. This is how many times you're supposed to eat a day. Oh, you're supposed to fast. Oh, this is how you can attract a man in your life, or a woman, or, oh God, it's just,
there's so much noise out there. I totally agree.
Right.
That's part of the process that I work on with my own clients and in my own writing and everything, is that I think this is part of that everyday codependent process, is that we are being taught as a culture to outsource trust. We are not being taught to trust ourselves. We're being taught to trust everything but ourselves. And marketing essentially teaches us something's wrong with you. You need to listen to us to find the answers because you can't possibly know it.
Right. Exactly.
You know, it's like, but I mean, perhaps some of that is because we've gone asleep to our truth, to our answers, to what is right for us. And so maybe we don't know that maybe we need to stop eating sugar. Maybe that's something we fight, you know what I mean? And maybe there is some truth to that. But when we can connect to that and find out that that's true for us, but not true for somebody else, then we're, you know, I really do believe in foundationally empowering people to follow their own truth and to always ask questions. If somebody ever encourages you to not ask questions, don't trust that person.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. So I wanted to read something that you put up. I don't know if it was yesterday or today. Let me get to it here really quick. And I thought it was really profound. It said, loneliness is often a lack of fulfillment with your own company. Stop running from the discomfort, explore what's underneath, and learn to nurture yourself. So when you mean explore what's underneath, are you meaning maybe the things that are blocking you from who you really are, like the fears, that sort of thing?
Yes, usually. So when I'm saying like loneliness is often a lack of fulfillment in your own company, why aren't we fulfilled in our own company? We're not fulfilled in our own company because we're not listening to ourselves. We're not empowering ourselves to do what we really want. You know, if you ask yourself, what do I really want right now? And you go to your phone and you go to other people, it's because that's an addictive process to numb yourself out to what is it that you truly want? What is it that you know, inner little girl or little boy wants inside of you? What is it that you intuitively know you want? A lot of times when I do that, when I feel the sense of, oh, I need to get on social media and check, you know, because we all do that.
Right.
What I really want is I want a nap or something really simple, but I won't allow myself it. Sometimes what I want is I am terrified of feeling the sadness. And that's what's on the other side, you know, examining what's on the other side. I truly believe, you know, I'm a very happy person, but I'm a truly happy person because I empower myself to feel my sadness. I empower myself to feel my fear. I empower myself to feel my anger. I empower myself to feel all of it without guilt and shame and without this sense of I shouldn't because it's not socially acceptable. I mean, if you think about the way that our society works, you know, even with something like grief, we say, there, don't cry, right?
Yeah.
We try to silence this emotional expression as though it's something shameful. And the more we get divorced from our own emotions, the more we are what psychologists call invalidating ourselves, and we're learning and conditioning ourselves not to trust ourselves.
Wow.
So it ends up feeding back into that intuitive landscape that says, I can't trust myself. Because emotions are information. I had to get really uncomfortable in order to make a choice every single time. And I had to allow myself to feel the discomfort. So when you're like, oh, I'm lonely, or oh, I need to go to social media, or oh, I need to go and entertain myself or drink some wine or do whatever, it's because we're avoiding this sense of discomfort, which might be anger, sadness, grief. It could be, you know, whatever, because we're taught that it's not okay to just feel uncomfortable.
And that's exactly why I've been doing what's called the Wim Hof Method. I don't know if you've heard of that.
I do it too. I've seen you in that group.
Awesome. Because my goal these last couple of years was to get into things that are uncomfortable for me, because like you said, it's so easy to be comfortable, especially with all the comfort things that we have in life now. And I just wanted to face my fears head on, just to get in, because that's like the hardest thing ever to do, is to get into something really cold water for me.
Right.
Every time. But once I do it and I'm in there, I face it, and, you know, feelings come up and I'm just there with it and I'm breathing through it. And of course the breathing helps a lot too, through all of that. And, you know, I just love that method of doing that, because it gets me to that point of being uncomfortable. And then once I do these things with my body, experience these things, I feel that sometimes when I go to sleep, I have these dreams of, this is what you're really afraid of, or this is where you need to go or not go, or this is what's going on. And this morning I woke up, it was really quite profound. I woke up, right before I woke up, I had this vision of it just like the snow was falling really gently, and I saw Buddha in the background. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
Wow, that sounds beautiful.
Yeah, right. Mm. But for me, it takes the body. I have to take my body to get uncomfortable, you know?
I love that. And so often I will talk about personal growth and things of that matter in terms of physical training. Like, for example, we say growth happens outside your comfort zone. That's all well and good. That sounds nice and all, but what does that actually mean? Right. Growth happens outside of your comfort zone is, here in Bali, I work with a trainer. And my trainer, if I'm doing bicep curls by myself, I'll do like 30. He has me do 300.
Wow.
And I'm like, I can't do this. He's like, you are a warrior. I'm sorry, he's British. He's like, yes, you can. You are a warrior. It's through the discomfort that we find our true strength. And I'm like, yeah, and I can do it every time.
Wow.
I'm amazed at what I'm capable of when I stop telling myself that this is all I can do, that I have to be comfortable in order to do something. Mm-hmm. It brings up another quote. I'm going to get the quote wrong, but it's Plato says something like, the treasure you seek is through the cave of fear.
Yeah.
That we have to go where the fear is. And often that's the route we have to take.
And that's what everybody's trying to avoid.
Amen. And I think it's something that's so kind of twisted within the world of personal development. Everybody's like, be fearless, be fearless. It's like, no, that's not possible.
We all have that fear. Just face it. That's all you got to do.
Exactly. Say, come on, let's go for a ride together and do it anyway. And use it as a tool. But we're also afraid of feeling fear. If I have to be fearless, that means I have to do things I'm comfortable with, which means I'm never going to do what I'm capable of.
Right. So what are some of the things that you want to do where you're afraid of? So what are some of those things like on your bucket list that you want to do?
Oh gosh. Some of the things, skydiving is one of those things, because I don't.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I don't particularly like heights. Mm-hmm. I'm on like big bridges, and I'm like, oh, that's not. I don't like that. But I always feel like skydiving, because bungee cord jumping is. I think I'd like poop myself or something.
Yeah, that's pretty intense.
Mm-hmm. Right? I want to get some fiction published. And I write in nonfiction. That's what all of my stuff is. But part of me and so part of me is terrified of that, because it's like, you don't have any experience. And who are you to do that? Because that's the thing we say to ourselves. Who are you to do that? Right? Mm-hmm. When I wrote a really in-depth bucket list about, 18 years ago now. Wait, 18, 15. Back in like 2003 or something. And it had like 150 things on it. I love when I assign my clients bucket lists and they're like, here's 5 things I want to do. And I'm like, oh no. That's not a bucket list. Like, that's like a conceptual thought list. Like, that's not, it's like all of these different experiences you could have. And I didn't even realize until about 1.5 years ago, I found it again. No, I guess this is maybe 3 years ago now. I found it again and I was like, oh my God, I'm doing all these things. Living on an island, staying in a Rocky Mountains, like doing all of these different things that I didn't think were possible back then, but I allowed myself to imagine were possible. So some of the things that are still on my bucket list, they're not even those things I'm terrified anymore, because I have gotten to a point in my life where I've done so many, what other people see as kind of crazy things, like, oh, I'm just going to pick up and move to Bali. Can't tell you how many people were like, you've never been there before. You've never even been to Southeast Asia. What do you mean you're just going to pack your stuff and buy a one-way ticket? What if you don't like it? And I'm like, then I'll pack my stuff and buy another ticket.
Right.
I can always adjust. I can always, move the path. We're never stuck. And when we realize that, we can try anything. And so I have so many travel things on my list, like I don't know, like diving the Great Barrier Reef or seeing the Wall of China or hiking through the jungles in Costa Rica, ziplining the jungles over there.
Mm-hmm.
But although there's a lot of things that scare me when it comes down to doing them, conceptually, not a lot of things make me feel terror quake in my boots anymore. Like, it would be things I wouldn't really want to do, like fighting a bull or something like
Running with the bulls in Spain, right? Yeah.
I don't really want to do that, right? But that scares me for a good reason. Because that's the other thing about fear. I do think we need to follow those paths that are based in fear, but I also think that fear sometimes tells us, like, that's not for you. You know?
You don't want to walk down a dark alley in the worst part of the neighborhood of a city. Yeah, that's common sense.
Some things are just not for us, you know, and that's okay. You know, like I also, what's another thing? Like it sounds cool and it would terrify me, but I don't really want to put on one of those flight suits and dive out of a plane and try to land with my feet without a parachute. That sounds crazy to me. I don't want to do that. You know, I've broken my arms a bunch of times. I don't really want to go down a black diamond hill in the Alps because I'd probably break my arm and that does not really sound that fun to me. The thing with fear and with following, you know, this path of fear is we have to feel as much excitement about it as we feel fear.
Okay, gotcha. Like, you know, somebody that's never really done any public speaking. You know, we know that's not going to kill them.
Right, exactly. And we can ask our fear, like, is this rational? Is there a rational reason that I'm afraid of this? Well, yes, that lion will eat you if you put your head in its mouth. You know?
Yeah, right.
Whereas, like you said, public speaking, no, that's a great opportunity, and your fears are completely unfounded. Nobody's going to, like, annihilate you or yell at you.
No.
Because you're speaking, you know.
Hopefully not.
They do,
and if they do, that's whatever, right? Yeah.
Well, and it's really their problem. That's the other thing, is we make everything about us, and that somehow there's something wrong with me. You know, let's say you did give a speech in front of, I don't know, a room of 50 people at your company, and somebody did ask you questions and did push back. Why is that always about you? Why can't that be about, like, that's the jerk in the company who does that to everybody?
Exactly. You're right.
I'm sure you've read the 4 Agreements. It's like that. We take things personally and we make assumptions. We assume that person's asking us questions because they know that we're not qualified. And it's like, maybe they're having a bad day. You don't know. Why are you assuming anything?
Right. So can you go into a little bit about anxiety? I mean, that's a huge thing that a lot of people have these days. And what is that all about? And what are some things that can help people who have anxiety?
Well, that's a really big topic.
Right. I know, it's a big topic.
Right. But no, I mean, I love that you asked about it, because it's something that I see in 90% of people. I think that our society brings us up to be anxious. I mean, even think about the role of marketing, right? Marketing in our society is there to show us that there's something wrong with us that we need to worry about and buy that product in order to fix. Whether it's we need more safety mechanisms in our car, or we need to put ointment on our face, or we're gonna, like, I don't know, look old overnight, or whatever it is. We're constantly taught to fear things, because if we don't, this horrible thing will happen. In psychology, we can often talk about that in terms of what we call catastrophizing. Basically, we think of the worst possible scenario, right? That could possibly happen, and we ride our thoughts down that road, down that pathway, and we make something much bigger than it actually is, because our thoughts do this. But this really brings me to the core idea with anxiety, and the core suggestion I have with anxiety that I teach. What I teach is that, you know, you probably know this, that emotions only last about 90 seconds.
Oh, wow.
In and of themselves, a single emotion going, wow, that makes me nervous, that will only last 90 seconds. The problem is that we perpetuate it with our thinking. We say, gosh, that makes me nervous. Well, I'm going to die if I do that. People aren't going to like me. People are going to think I'm weird. I'm going to embarrass myself. And if I embarrass myself, then nobody will ever like me, and I'll never be loved, and I will, whatever it is, you know. This is what I call the emotional cascade, is we think one thing that perpetuates the emotion and makes it bigger and bigger and bigger. And this is kind of what anxiety is. Anxiety isn't so much us saying, wow, that freaks me out, or wow, I'm afraid of that, or wow, I have some concerns about that. Is that realistic? Is there anything, factual based about that thing that I'm afraid of? No. Okay, I'm going to let that go because that's just an emotion. No, what we do is we empower it by thought after thought after thought. And so what you do is you have to become aware of the inner narrative that's going on inside of you that's perpetuating the emotion and making it bigger than the actual first moment. This is what I call the domino effect. So it's essentially like, like back in the 80s, everybody loved to put up like a million dominoes. I don't know.
Yeah,
They don't do that anymore. I don't even know. But I remember loving it as a kid.
Yeah.
But imagine you have all of these emotions, right? All of this terrible anxiety that can fall down if you just tip one domino down at the beginning. That's the way most people feel about anxiety. Well, I started to worry about this and then my whole weekend was ruined, right?
Right.
The whole, or I got into really bad traffic and then my whole day was wrecked, or I, got in a car accident and why do terrible things always happen to me? And we exacerbate it. The whole skill, and it's really a skill, it just takes practice, is you stick your hand in between the dominoes. You're not going to catch it on the first domino. You're going to catch it on the third or fourth domino usually. Oh my God, I'm late for work. My boss is going to hate me. Oh my God, I'm so nervous that I'm going to be late for that meeting. It's really important. Okay, breathe. Are they really going to fire me? I do amazing work. I'm always on time. Is there anything I can do about this? No. Okay. Yeah. And you stuck your hand in between that emotional cascade that would ruin your day, and you've allowed it to just be what it is.
I have this thing that happens with me sometimes. I don't so much have anxiety, but sometimes I'll have this thing come up where, say, I'm thinking about something, everything's going great, and then all of a sudden I'll have this, this fear will come up because I deal with fear. This fear will come up, and then my mind will imagine what's the worst thing that could happen. Oh, what if, we're driving down the road, and all of a sudden this car hits us, and then this person and then hits my daughter, and then she can't get out of her car seat. I mean, my mind will make that whole thing up. It's crazy. It's like, where does that come from?
There's something I like to call free-floating anxiety that essentially is when we don't have a trigger, like a car accident, or we're late for work, or our boss yelled at us, or something, the dog is sick, or whatever that starts the worry, and it just comes out of nowhere. Sometimes we have worries that sort of just live in the ether, right? We have this energy. I don't even want to call it a worry. It's because we manufacture it. It's like this energy, this anxious, worried energy that lives in the ether. And so what our mind does, because it's so used to attaching that energy to a worry, is it manufactures one. And it basically takes that thing, creates a problem. I see this a lot of times with people with relationships, they haven't texted me back and it's been 30 minutes and they must not love me anymore. Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you've just taken your free floating energy and attached it to something when that's not necessary. What you're doing is you're just torturing yourself over this feeling of not being okay with being uncomfortable. So in those times when you start to say, what if we get in an accident and my daughter would do this or whatever, you say to yourself, none of that is happening right now. And I know it sounds so simple. It's not simple. It's simple, but it's not easy. You know what I mean? None of that's happening right now. And I would deal with it when it happens. I can trust myself. I can trust that I'm doing the best that I can. And there's nothing I can do about stopping that situation by fearing it or by worrying about it. And so I'm just going to focus on what I'm doing, right? The other thing to realize with this sort of free-floating energy that we bring down and attach to things is that sometimes what that can be is a lot of energy inside of you that you're not outputting into things that are really functional for you. So what I mean by that is if you have a lot of that energy, maybe you need to go for long walks at night because it'll burn off some of that energy. It can literally just be sort of like this, it's like the pot is simmering and you have to kind of let the steam out, so to speak.
Exactly.
The other thing that can be happening is that if that pot is simmering we're not letting the steam out, it's because we're not allowing ourselves to feel that maybe what you're really afraid of is you're really afraid to lose your family. And you haven't allowed yourself to really sit with that fear and to sit with that sense of, gosh, I really love my family. And I really, there's part of me that really fears that they could die. And if I sit with that and I allow it to move through me, I'm no longer fighting it and then manufacturing situations which allow me to feel the feeling. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? Because maybe it feels like, well, of course I fear my family. I fear my family would die. Not everybody does, you know, but we don't ever let ourselves feel those feelings. And mm-hmm. so we avoid them. And then the energy comes squirting out someplace that we're not, it's not, you know what I mean? It's not actually what we're actually afraid of. It can actually even be another fear below that. So let's say we're talking about this car accident, but what you're really afraid of, if you sit with that feeling of angst and that feeling of like simmering energy, mm-hmm. is what we're really afraid of is a feeling of insecurity because our job is indicating that they might lay people off. Mm-hmm. And we're really afraid of that, but we won't even allow ourselves to think down that route. And this is why I say awareness and really feeling what we're feeling about what we're feeling it about is one of the most important things we can do. Because once we do that, we can then look at, well, is there anything I can do about possibly getting laid off? No. But now that I'm allowing myself to feel it, now I'm allowing myself to let it filter through my body, I don't have to sort of generate issues mm-hmm. of where this could happen otherwise. So it was a lot of stuff that I just talked about.
So it would, you did, yeah. So what I caught was trusting myself, and that's what a lot of us don't do, and sometimes right. I don't do for myself. And then the other thing that I caught was just taking time out to really feel those fears instead of avoiding them with social media, whatever habits that we have, or that sort of thing. It's just really taking time to feel that. And you're right. There's been times where like I just wanted to talk about it, but then I would avoid it because I'm like, well, it's kind of craziness anyway. I'm thinking in my head, why would I talk about these things? Right.
And that brings up such a brilliant point is, you know, when we empower ourselves to feel those things, the problem is we always go into judgment, self-criticism, guilt, shame that I feel this way. Well, I feel ashamed that I feel really sad about something that happened 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. If we can drop the guilt and the shame and the self-judgment about that sounds crazy. And we just feel it, and mm-hmm. we accept ourselves and love ourselves through it, mm-hmm. that's when it's able to flow through.
And then in the future, I won't get so attached to those thoughts that may come up. Right, exactly.
Because when you fight them, because you're not supposed to have them, they get sort of stuck. They get stuck in your body.
Mm-hmm. So can you explain a little bit about how your body, the energy of everything around us and your thoughts, how that all kind of mixes up together?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Like people are really stuck on just the external things. And they forget about the energy that surrounds us, the energy that's inside of us, and how your body, mind, spirit kind of all intertwines, and how important that is to connect it all.
Okay. Really great. I love that because you know, I've had I talk a lot about what I call the bliss layer of life, that we want to kind of live inside the bliss layer. The bliss layer being sort of this place where everything is we can be really grateful for things. We can feel the beauty in things. We can feel the connection between people and the earth and other, you know, nature. And even if it's like, catastrophe, we can feel that that's offering us an opportunity. All of these things, the bliss layer, where it's no longer about grasping onto our emotions or worrying about things. The problem is that people will often say to me, they'll say, well, that's great. You know, maybe one day I'll be able to go on a silent retreat and I'll get there too. It's like, like that's not the goal at all. The goal is we want to be able to do that in any moment. We want to be able to do that in line at the DMV. When we're surrounded by people who are angry. We want to be able to do that in the moments when we're stuck in traffic and we're starting to feel anxious and we connect with our gratitude and the things that are going right. You know, we want to be able to do that when we're cooking dinner. There's another quote, and I don't know who this is by, maybe anyway, where it says, what do you think happens when you become enlightened? The Buddha, you know, he chopped wood, carried water before he was enlightened. And after he's enlightened, chops wood, carries water. We don't go to some cave and sit and meditate all the time. That's not what this enlightened, awakened state is. It's literally just allowing ourselves to be content and happy and connected and to stop torturing ourselves. Because when we can stop the torture, stop all of that noise, like you were saying earlier, all the social media noise, everybody telling us what to do, everybody telling us that we're not good enough as we are, and we say, I'm not broken. And when I believe this, wow, everything's pretty okay in my life. How often do I stop and appreciate that? How often do I look at this plant in my house and actually that's like mindfulness practice. But mindfulness practice, just like meditation practice, is all nice and good, but the whole thing is we want to be present, fully present in this moment. Because when we're fully present in this moment, we expand our own energy, our own connection to the divine or the universe or source or whatever you want to call it, God. And we allow ourselves to constantly live in the bliss layer, which to me is really living constantly in harmony with that divine. I like to say, what I always say is it's almost like we have a big PVC pipe that goes through the center of our body, right? And into our crown chakra is the divine's just pouring love inside of us all the time. The problem is we have all of these filters, all of these rules, all of these shame, all of this guilt that filters it out and separates us from it. So it's not about, I have to go somewhere to connect with, the divine, the universe, whatever you want to call it, with the energy of all things, all that is. It's not that I have to be a different person. I just have to remove the barriers that say that's not already existing within me.
Can you repeat that last thing you just said? That we have to remove the barriers?
I just have to remove the barriers that say this doesn't already exist within me. Because that bliss layer, that connection to the divine, that sense of the energy of all things, the connection with all things, that is always available to us.
Exactly. So it's the conditioning that we have to work through.
Yep, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. And there's many folks out there are trying to find their way to remove those things. And there's billions of ways to do that, of course. Some people like to talk it out, like, for instance, with you, or like to go out into nature and go for walks, there's so many different ways. So tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you like to do it.
Well, the ways that I like to do it. I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, we talk about a meditation. Oprah even talks about, I meditate for 30 minutes twice a day. And you sit cross-legged like this. I don't really do that a lot. What I try to do instead is I try to live every moment in a sense of awe. And I like that word a lot, because what it is it's, I've had clients say like, well, I don't really know what God is, or this universe thing, or any of the energy, or I don't know what that stuff is. So how can I ever possibly connect with it? And I say, have you ever been outside in nature and you're hiking and you see a view and you just stop for a moment and you get goosebumps and you feel like, holy crap, I'm alive and I get to see that. That's it.
That's it.
Or that moment when you're with your partner and you are feeling so loved and you're having sex or you're being intimate and you just feel so connected and so open and you're not thinking about anything except for this beautiful being that you get to be with. That's it. Right. It's those moments when you say, my God, does my dinner taste good? That's it. It doesn't have to be so like, I have now connected to God. My Kundalini has now awakened. It doesn't have to be all of this stuff, all of these rules.
But don't you need the crystals and the bells? Right,
the crystals and the rules and the practices and the rituals and the altar and all that stuff. All of that is just rules. It's arbitrary stuff that separates us from the ability to have it right now, anytime. All we have to do is just relax and stop feeling as though there's all of these problems and all of these things that we have to do before we can get there. Because we are, and this is kind of the profound thought of it all, is we are already there. We are just convincing ourselves that it's not there yet. Does that make sense? It can be kind of a confusing concept that we already, like I said, we already have the divine or that beauty or that bliss layer within us. We already are connected to nature. We already are connected to other people. We already are experiencing the beauty of fresh corn on the cob or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to be present with it. Be aware of it.
Mm-hmm. It's like shining the brass, you know?
Yeah,
it's already
exactly.
there.
Exactly.
Or the diamond. Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, like let's say you go into a darkened room and you walk into this darkened room and you're like, I don't know, it's just a darkened room, but you turn on the light and suddenly you realize everything you've always wanted is in that room. All
Mm-hmm.
you had to do was turn on the light. You didn't have to go to another room. You didn't have to go buy a bunch of stuff. You didn't have to go find the people to give you the stuff. You just had to turn on the light.
And to turn on that light, what you mean by that is that people need to find that thing that lights them up, right?
What I mean by that is really we have to just become awake and aware. And what I mean by awake and aware is being aware of our feelings. What do I like? What don't I like? Right? How can we even know what lights how can we even know what lights us up if we're disconnected from our emotions and we're not allowing ourselves to feel the hell yes and the hell no? We can't. We won't know. We won't know when it hits us. But B, it's also cultivating the sense of awe and gratitude and sense of completeness with the things that we already have. Because it's never about, I'm going to feel great when I get to do that thing I really like. It's, I get to feel great now. And there's this thing I really like, and I'm moving towards that too.
Exactly.
So it's almost like two branches. We want to say hell yes to the things we really, really want, to the next thing, right? Mm-hmm. We also want to say hell yes to now with our presence, our participation, our full embodiment in this moment.
The gratitude is so important. That's what I've noticed for my life. That's how my life has shifted tremendously. Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about where you want to go from Bali.
Oh, I haven't announced this to anybody yet.
Oh,
so I guess your watchers will I'm going to Portugal. I'm actually going to go to Portugal.
Wow. What brought that up for you?
And what brought that up for you? That's what people asked about Bali. And I'm like, I don't know. It rang like a bell in my head. It doesn't make total sense, but there are some logical reasons. I'm actually a British citizen as well as a US citizen. And if Brexit goes through and I get into a European country before Brexit goes through, I can actually claim citizenship, and that, you know what I mean, have like EU citizen rights. That's part of the reason. But the other reason is, culture. It's having Europe at my feet. It's that you can surf and have beaches, but then you can have, all of these amazing cities. As you've got the Alps right over there. You can go to Italy. I have half my family in England, and it was just like the first thing that came to me was the energy of Bali felt complete. The energy of being here felt like I'm ready to move on. And then I started to feel, well, what feels right next? I didn't know at first. And that's not always the way it goes. A lot of times it can go with, I really want to go do this thing. And then we allow that thing to go. But for me, what happened was I feel as though the healing and the transformation and the evolution that occurred for me in Bali is wrapping up. And so now where is the next opportunity for me? Mm-hmm.
And so is that going to be soon, or just going to take a little
couple months, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'm like, girl, I'll move fast.
Well, if you don't have much stuff, it's pretty easy to move around, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I have 2 suitcases, and that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I just had 2 suitcases. That's not quite how it works with a kid, though.
No, and it's not how it works with a kid. And that's why I always want to make it clear exactly what we were just talking about with this sense of, because a lot of people are like, oh, that sounds amazing, but I can't do that till my kids go to college. Or, oh, that sounds amazing, but I have a dog. Or, oh, that sounds amazing, but my mom is sick and I really want to be here for her. This is why I say, put it on a bucket list. Like you said, hold on to those dreams and find your contentment, your bliss here, now. Because what that does is it empowers you to move toward the thing that will really make you happy in the future. And it doesn't cheat you out of getting to be happy now.
Right. At one point I thought, oh, I really want to move somewhere that's really warm and tropical, kind of like where you are. But then once I started getting into going into the cold and befriending the cold and being grateful for that, I'm perfectly fine where I am now.
Right.
Perfectly fine. Yeah.
Absolutely. Because you cozied up with the parts that you were uncomfortable with. but then you also found the parts of it you were appreciative of, you know. Or it's another example, you know, like sometimes when people meet me, they're like, well, you know, are you going to make me leave my husband and leave my job? No, I don't make anybody leave anything. What I'm going to do is empower you to be happy where you're at, and then make choices from that place to what will make me even happier, right? And this is why, you know, I got happy when I left my job as a psychologist, but that empowered me to leave my ex-fiance, but it didn't make me leave my fiance. I probably could have found a way. No, I don't know if I could have found a way to be happy in that circumstance, because it just wasn't for me. But I wasn't able to even feel into what made me happy until I allowed myself to be happy. Does that make sense? That sounds weird, but it's like kind of tautological, like a circular argument. Where
there is a lot of people out there who are that feel stuck, but they don't know why, right? Yeah.
Right. And so what I always say is start within yourself. Start within yourself. Start reducing that so that you can be the person who looks in the refrigerator and says, I just thought you needed something out of the refrigerator, instead of making it this big thing, instead of assuming all of these negative things around about the people around you, instead of assuming you're never going to have a life that looks different even. That's the other thing I get a lot of. Well, it's been this way and it's always been this way, so I'm stuck. You're not stuck. You're just there right now. And so as you move further along, you're going to be able to free yourself to do things differently, because you're going to be the person who can make those choices down the line. Whether that is you're the person whose kids are in college, or you're the person who feels stronger and able to leave the partner who isn't heart nurturing, or you're the person who has made enough choices that scare her that you have the courage to go minimalist and go to another, go live in another country, whatever that might be. We have to, that's the other thing, is we don't realize, patience is a really important part of this process. And that's why I'm trying to make it clear that this process didn't happen for me overnight. It wasn't like I just made my mind up and changed everything. No. Because we have to, like working out, we don't wake up one day and we're a couch potato and then go run a marathon. We have to train. We have to get ourselves stronger. We have to work on the parts of us that need to get to the point that they will support what we really want to do. I've
been working on myself for 16 years. So, it is a journey. It is a process, and it's going to be continuous, of course. But from where I was before, being totally unaware, to where I am being much more aware of my feelings, my thoughts, and my emotions, and knowing when things feel uncomfortable inside of myself to ask those questions, took a long time.
It does. And that's why we need to, it speaks to kind of our instant gratification culture that always wants results like this, is we don't look at it, well, I'm not here, I'm not living in another country or whatever it is, or haven't lost 100 pounds. It's like the quote by Gandhi, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Same with your intuition. And I think this is a nice segue to kind of bring it full circle. Right. Is you don't say, how do I get to this ultimate thing? How? We don't connect with the how. We just ask, what's my next best step? And
one step at a time. Right.
One step at a time. Yeah.
So tell everybody where they can find you online, and, all the social media, website, that sort of thing.
Yeah, you can find me at ashleegreer.com. It's ASHLEEGREER. WEEE. And I have an awesome free ebook. It's actually a substantial 70-page book, all about, I call it the no BS guide to life. It's all about living a life where you move beyond some of these thought patterns, the anxiety, the worry, the people pleasing. What I call is moving beyond toxicity and trauma, because I think we all have a little bit of toxicity and trauma in our past, and living in this sense of embodied sensual awareness where we are fully present in our lives and we're enjoying it, and we get to have a life that we truly enjoy. And so you can grab that free ebook if you're interested. You can connect with me here on Facebook, Dr. Ashlee Greer, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter, all the same stuff. Right. Yeah, happy to give you all that info. So
what is your book you're writing about now? That's what I'm curious about too.
I'm writing about what I call everyday codependency, which is this sense of to basically leverage being loved by controlling whether other people like them, by controlling other people's behaviors, by controlling emotions, by over-controlling. We don't think about it a lot as over-controlling. We think about it a lot as being really, really helpful. That's the funny thing but we do it because ultimately beneath the surface, we feel as though we have to do something to earn being loved. And so that's what the book is about.
And that is so prevalent in a lot of places, all over the world.
Exactly. I mean, I actually have a video on YouTube where I talk about, I think 80% of women in particular, but probably men too, have an issue with this, because it's a totally different way of thinking about what we talk about as codependency. Codependency in the past is, you try to fix your alcoholic husband or something, and you're in a codependent relationship. This is not that. This is not something that happens in relationships. This is something that happens within the self. And it's a coping mechanism to try to get your needs met because you feel as though they weren't met at a certain point. And so you really are trying to do as best as you can with the skills that you have, but it's not ultimately making you happy.
So for everybody out there, if you have, it's you. If it's you, if you have those codependency issues, if you feel like you're stuck, if you feel like you're anxious, or whatever that may be in your life, I highly recommend that you reach out to Ashlee, because she has the skills, as you can see, to help you out in those situations, to help you get unstuck, to help you slowly but surely have that fulfillment in your life, to have that confidence, that joy, and that awesome, that juiciness. It's just so good when you get to that point in your life where you don't really care about what other people think, but you still are connected and feeling the blissfulness of everybody together. It's kind of ironic in that way, right? Yeah.
It is, right? I know that somehow by being more, what I like to call it being self-possessed and open. So I am good inside of myself. I love myself. I don't need anybody else, but now I can choose everybody else, because it comes from a place of not needing to settle for, well, I guess this is good enough because I have to fill a hole, but I'm fulfilled. And now I can be with other fulfilled people, and I can feel connected to everything, because it's not a matter of, my favorite analogy is it's like going to a buffet. And if you eat all the cottage cheese right at first because you're starving, you're not going to be able to get down to the steak. And so we never want to get to the point where we're starving.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Ashlee. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for connecting. You are definitely somebody I'm glad I'm able to connect with, because I'm going to reach out to you. So anyway, guys, have an awesome day. Have an awesome night wherever you are, and peace out. Love you.
Bye.
Bye.